You know what? I got a great question from somebody on the channel that I want to talk to about here. Archetypes. Do you know what that is? How is it in the material? The individual told me that they're spotting some of the things I'm seeing now, beginning to recognize the idea that the male represents the physical or the conscious. There's a little bit that needs to be explained here. But the question was then, could I explain more about the archetypes or something like that to help look at things? So what I want to do is address that. I don't really have archetypes going on here, but there's something very similar. So let me tell you where I'm coming from. My name is Dan Paulson, and first let's go ahead and read his comment here, and then I'll tell you what I have going on. It's a little bit, we're going to cover a little bit of Joseph Campbell here, but I'm not really, I think what I'm doing is closest to what his template is, but his is not exactly right. He spotted the template by repetitively looking at things. I found the template by needing to take the path. So while he observed it and understood it academically, I got to learn it experientially. So I know it in a different way. The comment was this: I think what I'm currently finding most helpful about this framework is the character archetypes and things motifs. The woman correlates to the inner subconscious, the man correlates to the physical outer world. The flooding, water motif, etc. I recognize them everywhere now. I think it would be helpful if I had some sort of key to establish the more than common archetypes and motifs. Care to share what you have found? It may be a helpful fundamental to those, or for these presentations. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? There needs to be more on the table. I've done this before, but honestly, you can see I'm learning it as I go, that it's really big and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'll put something out and go, this is what I have. And then I go and learn something else and go, okay, update, there's more going on. All right. So Jung has his 12 archetypes, and I don't use archetypes. There is an archetype that is in the story. One of the archetypes is what? The hero. That's the hero. All right. So we have to be careful here, though. It doesn't mean a hero like we think of hero. What hero means is this. Where did I hear this from one time? I'm gonna paraphrase something I heard one time, that there's like 3 kind of broad ways to enlightenment or to feel better. One of them is like service, deeds. I've hurt. I got bad things happen. I don't know how to deal with it. I'm going to dedicate my life to helping others, which then heals me. I'm healing others. I'm healing myself at the same time. This is a way to work. That was probably something that was done more commonly in older times. Today, it's probably a little more difficult to do something like that. The most common way probably is relinquishing it, turning it over to a higher power. I have all this hurt. I have all this, everything, fears, all kinds of stuff. I don't know how to deal with it. I turn it over to a higher power. There, it's released. Effectiveness, such. Well, yeah. The third path is a very rare path, and that's called the hero's journey. It's really not a hero. What it is the person who says, you know what? I see what my problem is. Yeah, my life is messed up because of things that happened to me that I believe that I'm still carrying. I got hurt here. I got hurt there. That happened to me. That happened to me. I believe this. All those things are making me so mad that my life is now that way. There's not very many people that are going to go, oh, that's about me. I have to go inward. That right there is the hero's journey. That doesn't make you a hero. It makes you the person that goes, I'm going to go face the fears and deal with them so that they're not fears anymore, so I don't have to keep living through them. Okay, so we have to be careful about that term. I don't like certain terms because of that. I'm on the hero's journey. Oh, you're a hero? Well, what do you think you are? No, it doesn't mean like that. So scary verbiage sometimes in a world of people that don't understand what's going on. All right. So as far as I'm concerned, and I don't work with Jung. I've looked into some things, and even though I have Joseph Campbell's book here and I got it and I started reading it, I didn't finish the first chapter. I wouldn't even recommend it. It's not what I'm looking for. It has some stuff in there, but I realize, okay, you see what my work is. Let me just pop his open and read into it, something here. So it is when Dante had taken up the last step in his spiritual adventure and came before the ultimate symbolic vision of the triune God and the celestial rose, he had still one more illumination to experience, even beyond the forms of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Bernard, he writes, okay, so it's like, I'm just looking for the interactive template, working interactive stuff. So he's not there with that. He's got the template. It's not complete. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Because it is closest to what I'm doing. Now, the archetypes for Jung in his psychology work, it's really kind of like personalities. People have different personality types. Like in the Myers-Briggs, what are you? I'm an INFP. What does that mean? He wouldn't use that. He would compare that with something else. He's seeing different things. All right, I had to look these up. I don't remember them. These are the 12 archetypes. The Jungian archetype list: caregiver, creator, explorer, hero, innocent, the jester, lover, magician, member, outlaw, ruler, sage. So those are the 12 right there. What we're going to do from that list of 12, we're going to take the hero only and find out what that does. This is that person's trip. It's not about the caregiver or the outlaw or the member or the magician or the lover or the sage or anything like that. It is about the hero. It is the hero's journey. Okay, so we are going to use an archetype, but let's try to separate somehow from the verbiage of that. And what do I got? I'm not even looking at the right screen here. Okay. All right, does that make sense? So if you're going to look at this and anybody that looks at this and says, yeah, okay, that's me. I see how that works. I see what I have to do. I'm going to hook myself into it. Hero archetype right there. You're going to have a certain brain type and you're going to be that archetype. People that aren't, there are people that are not the hero type brain type that will never do this. There are people that if you started saying, you know what, I got molested and I had to heal myself. I had to find ways to get rid of it because it just tore me up so bad and now I tell people about it so that it helps them get past their own. And there'll be people that go, oh man, glad you got it figured out. They never had it happen to them. There'll be other people that go, yeah? Can you tell me that again? How does it make you feel? And you know where they're at. They're ready to heal. There's other people that are like, you freak, get away. What are you, God, you got to tell people about it? Okay, what do they have? They've got the issue, and they're not going to resolve it. That's how we spot things. But you don't hit people with it. It'll piss them off. All right. Cause and effect is a wonderful thing to learn, but it's sometimes you got to learn to keep quiet. All right. And I don't. You see that I fit some of the criteria by some of the things I do. I feel like I have to, you know what, I'm right here. There's this sense of arrogance, but it's not arrogant. People will say you're arrogant. You just won't even back down. It's like, you know what I'm saying is demonstrable. What you're saying is supernatural. I'm not being arrogant. You're being arrogant. What the hell? You're wrong. If you told me you have faith, okay, you're not arrogant. If you're telling me you believe in supernatural and there's proof and I need to believe it, that's freaking arrogance. If I say no, I'm not being arrogant. Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. We just get into these things. There is a cognition that we're going to have that other people don't have that is not necessarily common. And you need to know that. All right. If we understand that there's something going on in an evolutionary process, that we're a brain type that was necessary in the group to protect the group, that had to know a lot of stuff and people paid attention to you. That's not the role anymore. There's not very many of us. It would have been a necessary evolutionary process to help humans survive, to have different brain types. And the vast majority of them are not going to be the ones that know what's going on. They're going to be the ones that need to just feel better. I need to feel good. We're out here. We need to know what's going on. We need to have it accurate. Anyway, we're kind of stuck now in where are we? We've got that brain type and we're living life going, I don't know what's going on. We're not living in that world anymore. We don't live that life anymore. So now we're stuck in civilization going, how does this brain type work to help me today? It's not helping the group anymore. What do I do for myself? And that's how we begin to understand, you hang on to a lot of stuff. You remember a lot of things. You process a lot of things. It's very important to remember where all the good and all the bad stuff is. You're going to have details. You're going to remember things that other people will go, how can you remember all that stuff? And you're like, I don't know. There's other times, though. I can remember going to work. I'd take out my GPS to drive to had some remote locations at points. I'd take out my GPS and run the track to it every time. People would say, you know what? You've been to that station how many times now? You're driving out through the woods on a couple of different dirt roads, and every year you come out here, you have to use the track. Don't you remember how to get there? And I'm like, no, I don't even pay attention. I just drive out there. But I'll remember other things that they're like, how do you remember that? So it's not a case of, I don't think it's a case of good memory. It's a case of what do you focus on? What is interesting to you? Everybody remembers a lot of stuff, but people remember a lot of things that I have no interest in, and vice versa. So, okay, one thing that I think is happening, it's kind of hard to see. There's not many people connecting up and talking and knowing what their brain types are and things like that yet. But it really seems to me like the people that are hero journey kind of people are introverted. You're highly sensitive. You become very aware of things. We tend to be jumpy and have a larger awareness of things and have a lot of empathy and feelings towards people, but quick to also anger and knock it off, that kind of stuff. But we're also highly analytical. We will process and process and process. When I work the verses, I do things with the verses other people won't do, and they're like, oh, well, how'd you do that? It's like, you flip every word, go through the words, process them. It's a learned thing. Perhaps my favorite, easiest, simplest example is the first line of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That is a mentally interactive step. I know that right now. So if somebody says, yeah, that means you can't understand it, I go, that's not mentally interactive, is it? No, it's not. You can't interact with it. You can carry it, but you can't interact with it. I'm going to look at it and go, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The Tao that can be told is the fake Tao? Fake eternal. What if we leave the eternal in place? The Tao that can be told is the Tao that can't be told. The Tao that can be, the Tao that can be thought of. The Tao that can be mentally, it's a trip you take. The Tao is a pathway. The Tao that is taken is the eternal Tao. Then it's like, okay, you solved the puzzle. It's time to move on. And people won't do that. That's really all it amounts to, except that it gets super thick. That's simply an example of that analytical process. The people that'll do that will resolve it. They're verbal puzzles. And the only way to resolve them is think them through. It's going to require analytical thought process and an open mind to see what's there instead of saying, here's my belief. I'm going to manipulate that thing until it somehow fits with my belief. And if I can't make it fit, I'm going to ignore it. We don't do that. Everything in the Bible, 100% of it is metaphorical. Even if it's like, well, that's really there. Come on, that one's not metaphor. It's still being used metaphorically. I don't care if it was real or not. Well, that building was destroyed. You can see it was there. That doesn't matter. It's referencing this. How would we make it today? The temple of Saddam was destroyed by 7 bombers flying 7 circles and dropping 7 bombs on the 13th day of, we're going to be using these numbers and sequences that they're using. We can continue with the process if we know what process they're doing. But in cases like this, they're us. The Saddam temple is not Saddam's temple in the world. People would say that. It's being used as an analogous term that means, that was my earlier self, that was my unaware. Maybe I was evil, maybe not, but it just represents my earlier self and it needs to be destroyed. So all of the verbiage is used in a way that becomes kind of tricky that way. Okay, so where does that leave us? I guess I wanted to make sure to say that. I wanted to be on board, or make sure everybody's on board with the idea that what I'm doing here is really kind of this focused, it is the hero's journey out of that archetype list, out of those 12, just one. And that this is the path that we're taking. There's other teachings in there that are not all hero's journey. We get into Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching, things like that. Those are not hero's journeys, but they're the teachings of how to purify yourself. They're just not they're not made in there's different genres. There's different styles to teach that template. And that is one style, one genre. Yeah, very short. However, you can turn it into something big stories, mythologies or religions. And it just becomes the same core template. Only now, instead of cyclical pain being pain follows like the wheel, follows the hoof of the ox that draws the carriage from Buddha, it turns into something like 10 plagues and takes chapters to cover. It's still saying cyclical pain. However, within those 10 plagues, there's a lot of other details in there as well. There's a lot of things going on. They're very rich. We don't know it. We don't know how rich they are. Okay, let me see where I need to go with this. I know you want to ask some questions, and so I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where I was coming from and how to focus things in on. The Joseph Campbell, yeah. So there's some things in there that he hasn't identified. One of the most important ones that he should have spotted out of all if you looked at his template, he does know it's an inner path. He's got a crossing of the threshold going into the mind. You see, he left it nebulous or analogous. I won't say cross the threshold or enter the narrow gate or, go in through the doorway or anything. I'll just say turn into the mind. That's what that means. So I've got it very plain languaged at this point. He didn't do that. Belly of the whale is after crossing the threshold. No, turn inward, go to the memories. That's crossing the threshold and belly of the whale. So I've got it identified to what it is at the mentally interactive level right there. He knew what that was. He just didn't put it there. Obviously, he knew what it was. In fact, real quick, let me just read the first paragraph of his prologue in the book right here. He knows there's a single myth. Whether we listen with aloof amusement to the dreamlike mumbo-jumbo of some red-eyed witch doctor of the Congo, or read with cultivated rapture thin translations from the sonnets of the mystic Lao Tzu, now and again crack the hard nutshell of an argument of Aquinas, or catch suddenly the shining meaning of a bizarre Eskimo fairy tale, it will always be the one, shape-shifting, yet marvelously constant story that we find, together with a challengingly persistent suggestion of more remaining to be experienced than will ever be known or told. That's what we're going after. Well, to me, we don't have time to figure this out anymore. Let's get it on the table. It's psychology that's going to help us flow in a collective. It helps us flow better in the universe. So, yeah, do it. All right, but the thing that he left out of that specific template, there's two templates. He didn't identify the creation template. He didn't even know that was there. All he saw was the self-healing template. And what he didn't identify right up front was the cyclical pain. That's the beginning of everything. Lao Tzu, caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Whatever you're hanging on to, you see happen again and again. Buddha, pain follows. Like if you had an evil thought, pain follows like the wheel follows the hoof of the ox that draws the carriage. You will have pain in childbirth repeatedly. Cyclical pain, roll a boulder up and it comes back down, and roll it up, it comes back down. In Greek myth, that's cyclical pain. You're being punished and there's something that's happening over and over again that you can't resolve. Liver getting eaten out, grows back. Liver getting eaten out, grows back. Same story. And you're in punishment. Yeah, you're in punishment and you're going through cyclical pain right there. The food being eaten. Those are the things you look at and go, okay, you're looking for not, in those you're looking for, if you know already that you know this story contains cyclical pain, you can read something and go, okay, I see what that is. That's some kind of a weird process going on that's causing repeated danger, repeated problems. If we went to the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, what they have there is like Lady Huber is the evil force who creates all these things and creates this damage. And then as soon as that gets done, Lady Huber is the creative force that creates all this stuff and does all this damage. It's like a repeat of the same thing. It's like, what happened there? Well, I know it's on a clay tablet, but it looks like somebody double copied or something right there. That's cyclical pain in an early form. Here's the bad. Here's the bad again. So when you know that cyclical pain is a part of what sends us on the hero's journey, that's there. Joseph Campbell didn't spot that. That's the reason you go on the journey. It's not in his template. And just in case you're interested, every tradition in Greek myth, there is an origin. There's a creation of some sort, a beginning. In all myths and religions, or in Greek myth, there's one creation. In all of Jewish works, there's one creation. In fact, all of Abraham, that creation fits for Christians and Muslims as well. So there's one creation and then piles and piles and piles of monomyths. So the creation is very short. It's very small. It's right up front. The creation in the Bible that he did not identify goes from chapter 1 to chapter 6, where the world needs to be destroyed. Not even mentioned. Noah picks up, that's the hero's journey right there. And make sure I say that right. That creation to chapter 6 is the creation of a human and the average life cycle of somebody who gets hurt but never turns inward. That's what that is right there. That first template, those 6 chapters. Cyclical pain is not held in that destruction. Where it's held is the punishment of Eve. You will continue to have pain in childbirth, increasing pain in childbirth. That's the inner self, as long as whatever it is that you've got something that has been created inside of you as a product of a union of an experience, and every time it emerges, that's referencing what? I've got a bad experience. It hurts, and whenever I think about it, it hurts. Every time I think about it, or it gets triggered, it hurts. It's always happening. That's pain. That's continued pain in childbirth, cyclical pain. That's the reason we go on the trip. So there's variations depending on where you go. As you get into the monomyths, they're going to be pretty slammed right up front. In the creation, it's kind of spread out. It's an older style. Yeah, there's something weird going on. Okay, the purpose here, though, is to look for common motifs between material. Let's do that right now. Let's do the creation of the human. Us in the beginning. Let's grab just a pile of them. All right, now none of these are hard. There's just a lot of them all over the place, and it looks daunting, but it's a years of collecting and learning. All right, I'm going to use the Tao Te Ching right here first to say this is how we come about as a human being. This is not in a monomyth form, but it's in the teaching. It's right here on page 1. That's that verse right there. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Okay, it's a mental trip. We get right down here. It says, naming is the origin of all particular things. Now, I have to know I already know this is a mental trip. What does that tell me then? Naming is the origin of all particular things. What is naming? I don't name things. They are already named. I didn't call things what they are. And at some point, you have to realize, okay, as I'm coming online and experiencing life, whatever I judge, name, classify, experience. I have a memory, and now I have an emotion with it. A memory and emotion put together over an experience, that is the origin of that. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Okay, well that doesn't sound very much. One thing I know about Chinese material is it didn't translate well. Okay, so I'm going to grab another Tao right here from a different translator. I'm going to read the same line. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. So it's not just saying naming is the origin of all particular things. It's saying 10,000. So you're like, oh, well, that's a big number, actually. That's what we become, isn't it? Naming is the origin of all the things that you're going to become. All right, if we go to the Buddha, Dhammapada, this is not Buddhism. This is not Taoism. This is their core work. This would be like if you took the Sermon on the Mount out of the Bible and said, this is just the Sermon on the Mount, okay, out of Christianity. That's what this would be like. All right, verse number 1, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It's founded on our thoughts. It's made up of our thoughts. Right there in plain language, he's telling us it's a mental path. We don't even have to figure that one out. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. We become the verse. I'm the ox that's drawing the carriage through life, and the wheel following me, the wheel is cyclical. As long as pain is held in the hub of that wheel, and this is a mental process. As long as something mentally is held in place, that pain is going to continue to follow me cyclically, as long as I wander through life, draw my carriage through life. And then it goes on and says, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, getting rid of everything, happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves. Ooh, we get rid of everything. I missed that one in here, didn't I? The Tao Te Ching. Does it say it? Yeah. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. How beautiful is that? Free from hanging on to things, you realize the mystery of life. Okay, that's just those right there. Right off the bat, what's Jesus' first one in the Sermon on the Mount? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Free from the things you hang on to, you have the good experience. It's combined right there. Sounds a lot different. The analogs are shifting. The template is not. The teaching is not. The teaching is remaining the same. The words used to carry them are being changed. All right, one thing I want to talk about before moving on to the bigger ones, this is very key in the interpretation process. I've mentioned this before, but I want to say it again here in this block of things. I'm going to make up a short verse and show how it works. An anchored ship cannot sail. That's cyclical pain. Whatever you're hanging on to, you can't become free of. I'm the ship. The anchor is me holding on to something. I cannot get free of what I'm hanging on to. That's how that verse works. You become the verse. I put that in the population, and it's up for grabs. Only certain people are going to understand it. Now, there's a funny thing that needs to be understood. There's only 3 ways to look at that verse, despite the fact that there's going to be thousands and thousands of ways that verse might get interpreted. First of all, if it's not interpreted plain language, somebody's going to say, duh, Yeah, you get off your ship in port, you better put an anchor or tie it up or something. It's going to float off. That's all they get out of the verse. Somebody else that realizes this metaphor is going to go, oh, you know what? That actually means something. I am the ship. But it means something in the physical world. I'm hanging on to relationships, that in jobs, habits, somehow something that I'm not getting free of. And as long as I'm hanging on to that, I can't get free of it. And you know what? That's true, isn't it? That's an absolutely true thing. However, somebody else might come along and say, well, no, that's not what it means to me. I need to hang on to something. When I was born, I remember growing up in an orphanage. I don't even remember mom and dad. We were beat. We were abused. I had a life of trouble. I left there. I was in trouble with the law all the time. Finally, I found a church group or something to get into, a way to get involved in something that helped me out. Finally, I got an anchor and now I'm safe in port. And you'd go, well, that sounds pretty good too. Whoa. One verse with different meanings. That's the religious part right there. You have to make yourself the verse. But you have to make it mental. You have to take that first step and say it's about up here, not about the physical world. So the verse only works two directions, not all those other outward directions. In fact, that's it, outward or inward. It's either outward looking or inward looking. When it's inward looking, it changes what it is. And the people that are not doing that are going to tell you all day long you're wrong. Meanwhile, you find something in there that they're carrying. Okay, so verse interpretation is always that way. And if you go to the Bible, understand this. Treat everything you read that exact same way. If you treat any of it like that, how do you know what to treat and what not to treat? You know what they did? They made every bit of it that way. Every bit of it. But then you have to understand we're living 3,500 years after them. All right, let's get back into making ourselves. This is from the Enuma Elish. This is the making of the Temple of Babylon. What is going to end up being the Tower of Babel in Jewish works. But this represents the construction of us. Then to build Babylon, to be the construction project you seek, we're going to build a lofty temple. Let me turn this off for a second here. So what is important to understand in this one right here is that there was not all the other ones I'm reading is the beginning of us, how we came about in the beginning. This right here is how we're coming about the second time around. They didn't have a creation of a temple in the first one in the Enuma Elish. It was actually Tiamat and things that had to be destroyed. The first temple that's being built is this one. We're now going to build a lofty structure that is our new life. This represents my new self, that with all of the things up high, everything in control, we got parties going on up here, we're happy amongst ourselves, we're laughing and goofing around, we're having a good life. That's what that represents right there. The tower represents the building of ourselves, and if you were to compare it with this, it would be the mother of 10,000 things. Yeah. Does that make sense? It gets thick like that, okay? At some point, what you're understanding is that you're always somehow coming about. You are coming about. They're going to be using something for you to come about. And in the Enuma Elish, of course, when we first came about, we came about in the bad way as Tiamat that had to be destroyed. Other places, we're going to find out that buildings have to be destroyed or fields need to be taken back over, or I need to go get my land back or my country back or something like that. How about Jesus and going to get your vineyard back? These get a little bit thicker because you would go, well, does vineyard mean the same thing as your land or your structure or something like that? Yeah, and it continues to morph. What comes out of a vineyard? Wine. Wine is a good thing. Wine makes you feel a certain way. So you need to get the way, the vineyard represents the way you feel. And you want yours back. And those are things we're going to see. Here's a quick comparison that's off a little bit. If you have read the Bhagavad Gita, yeah, we have Krishna and Arjuna getting ready to go to battle. Arjuna's supposed to have the land. It belongs to him and his family. However, it's been on loan at first to all kinds of friends and family, other people. Many people have the land, and it's time to go get his land back, and they won't give it up. You know what this is? That land represents our early selves and what we first came about, and we're not giving it up. Arjuna represents the called person going, all right, it's time for me to go back and get things. Krishna's with him in the chariot. They're going up and down the battle line, surveying. What is that? They're not crossing the threshold. He's just looking at it going, oh man, I got to go get them. But he's struggling, and he's asking he's asking Lord Krishna, and Krishna tells him, you know what, I can be your advisor. I forgot to mention, Krishna was with him as the driver of the chariot. That's important to the story. That's the higher awareness telling the consciousness, I'm here to work with you, but you have to step in. And what happens in the end is he doesn't go. He's at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. You know what that is right there? Moses on Mount Horeb. God calls him and says, it's time for you to lead my people. Take them to a free place. Instead of going and get your land back, you're leaving the past and you're going to somewhere new. It still works. That's exactly what's happening from a psychological standpoint. We're leaving the past and going somewhere else. And what happens is God calls him and tells him he has to go, and he's like, nah, I can't talk right. I don't speak right. So we have both of those right there. We have the calling and the denial of the call. It's time to go. I can't. It's time to go. I don't speak right. They both end up going as the stories continue on. But right there, you can see those parts. God is calling, the person saying, I don't know. That doesn't always happen. But those are two places where you can see it. If you were to look at Greek myth and, Exodus. Yeah. The Greek myth is the voyage of the Argo. If you were to look at certain things, there were different versions, so it depends on where you go to look at it. But what you'll see is that Jason was isolated out as a youngster and sent off to train. He was not around for a long time. He was saved out in some stories or just sent off to be trained. His family was destroyed. The land got taken over by an uncle. So Jason is off and he's not ready to emerge. You would see Jesus, disappearing at a young age and not returning again until the age of 30. You start seeing things in here and going, well, wait a minute. You also see Moses put in a basket. There's that isolation, many called, few chosen. There's an element in there that shows somehow he is isolated out. And, so what happens? We had the harpies there, cyclical pain in the Greek story. We have plagues happening in the Jewish story, in the Exodus story. The struggle to leave the past, the island of the island of the women that they couldn't leave. They couldn't, or depending on the version, the island of the old gods that they tried to bring something with and it came after them. There's something about leaving the past behind that you have to do. When we get over here, it's Pharaoh. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. God gives him a reason to let him go and then hardens his heart again. It's like, reasoning through these things, there's purposes for them that fit. Why would God send plagues to help Pharaoh decide, okay, yeah, your God's powerful, you can go ahead and go, but then turn right around and harden his heart so that he can't. Then have to send plagues and then harden his heart. It's like, here, I'm giving Moses, I'm punishing you. I'm punishing your enemy, Moses, so that they will let you go. But as soon as they say you can go, I'm going to make it so that they change their mind. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Whatever comes from the higher realm is our choice. This is an internal struggle. It's not happening in the world. It won't make sense unless you interpret it that way. This only flies if one understands it as an encoded internal struggle represented there. So those are both being held. They escape. They finally get away. They sail through the clashing rocks in Greek myth, barely making it through. And in the Exodus story, they go through the Red Sea. And you can see side-by-side elements. If you put the stories side-by-side and line them up, you would see that they're following steps along the way that are on that pathway. That crossing of the threshold, going into a tough place, going into where you have to, in the Argonautica story, you've got to defeat some things. In the Exodus story, you must go to a place that's devoid of the past. You got to leave it behind and go someplace where it's like emptiness, the desert. Jesus has it, the wilderness, 40 years, 40 days. They crossed the Red Sea. Jesus had the baptismal. You start looking for things that don't look very close at first, but you'll spot them like that. But before I move on from that Argos story, there's two thresholds. This is one that shows two thresholds to cross to get to the danger area. The first threshold is crossed because if you were to view the story, you would see that King Pelias was his uncle, and he's the one who's controlling the land. He's the one who took it from Jason's father. So we've got sequence going on. Jason is going to go back and get it. This represents Jason is the called hero. I'm going to go back and defeat my early self. Now what he does is he crosses a river and loses a sandal and meets up with Pelias right there. This represents crossing that first threshold, which just means turning in and facing yourself. You're not facing your deep fears yet. From here, a variety of things happen, but not until they cross the clashing rocks does the real danger begin. So it actually shows the crossing of two thresholds. That would represent, okay, we can turn inward, can't we? We can all turn in and face ourselves, but can we all turn in and face our fears? That's another wall. So it's pretty rich. All right, let's get back to our buildings then, the structures, towers, things like that. The Tower of Babel, I've been all over this one recently, but in this case, what we have is that, it starts off where everybody is working together. They're building a tower up to God. God comes down. The Lord says, look, there are one people. This is where the non-monotheism is. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there so that they will not understand one another's speech. So he scattered them abroad, and they left off building the city. So the city, the tower, whatever, was just left there abandoned, which would be what a ziggurat left behind. So in this case, putting ourselves into the template, bearing in mind that there's something very purposeful in the carrier shell as they try to separate themselves from the Babylonians. In fact, how would that sound? We just read the Babylonian story. If we go read it again, this place was built for all the gods. They were up there and they were going to have revels, and this was the high place. This is our new elevation, our new existence in life, and we're all up here in an elevated place living happily together. They turn right around here and go, oh yeah, all those guys, those are the ones that come down and destroy it all. They've inverted, they took the good guys and made them bad guys. But if you look at it and you analyze it, there's another case where you go, this doesn't make sense. Everybody was together, one speech, working together, trying to get up to God. And God was like, there's nothing wouldn't God want you to be able to accomplish anything? Why wouldn't he? You would look at that and go, does God want us to become just ridiculous imbeciles down here that can't do anything? Can't get along? Was that the idea? That's what it sounds like if you read the story. So you can't do it that way. You have to look at it and say, all right, what is it on the template? The structure is my structure. I started out pure, but what happens over time is that I didn't maintain that purity, and a life experience comes along. The Lord. The Lord is what? I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. What am I out here? I'm whatever you want. Do you want good? Do you want bad? Make your thinking. You won't know that, but that's what's happening. So the Lord didn't really come down. What happened is life happened, and we became scattered. And that unity that we had as children, we're no longer internally unified. We're scattered. All right, let's go look at it in Exodus. Bricks without straw. All right, here we are at chapter 5, and I'm using the NRSV here for this read. And how does it go here? So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. So the leader of this is the good part of us, wants to go to the bad part of us. Says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may celebrate a festival to me in the wilderness. Wilderness is repeated 27 times in this book of Exodus, and that means the wilderness is a good place. Jesus went to the wilderness. They want to celebrate in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has revealed himself to us. Let us go to a 3 days journey into the wilderness. 3, 7, grid, 40. You could have said 40 days journey right there. It'd have been the same thing. They spread them out though. 3 days journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God. That's what Jesus did, went 40 days into the wilderness to pray and fast. Or he will fall upon us with pestilence or sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their work? Get to your labors. So we have to really dismiss ourselves from good and bad and understand that these are parts of us. All of these are part of us. They're not external to us. They're internal. We have to be careful with how we read them and treat them. They said the God of the Hebrews has revealed, and it's also very old, and it's not for us. It wasn't written for us. So we're trying to crack into it from a distant place. Right? Then they said the God of the Hebrews has revealed himself to us. Let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God, or he will fall upon us with pestilence or sword. Yeah, I want to go purify myself or bad's going to happen. That would be like first sin, huh? He'll fall upon us with pestilence or sword. Bad things will happen. But the king of Egypt said to them, now they are more numerous than the people of the land. Yeah. The mother of 10,000 things. More numerous than the people of the land. That's a lot of internal parts. And yet you want them to stop laboring. That same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people as well as their supervisors, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you shall require of them the same quantity of bricks as they have made previously. Do not diminish it, for they are lazy. That is why they cry. Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on them. Then they will pay attention to it, and not to deceptive words. So the taskmasters and the supervisor of the people went out and said to the people, go get your own straw, get it wherever you can find it, but your work isn't going to be diminished. So the people scattered through the land to Egypt to gather stubble for straw. They scattered all over. The taskmasters urged them on, saying, complete your work, the same daily assignment as when you were given straw. And the Israelite supervisors, from whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why do you not finish the required quantity of bricks yesterday and today as before? And the Israelite supervisors came to Pharaoh and cried, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to you, make us bricks. Okay, I don't want to get into this can get super deep interpretation. Let's stay without getting too deep into it. Okay, first of all, making bricks, clay, straw. Yeah, bricks by themselves, just clay, hardened. It would take them a long time. They'd be a wet mass of clay, and they'd be kind of fragile, like cement without rebar, or fiberglass without cloth, without matting, or something like that in there, just a polyester resin. So you want to have something in there that it helps it dry faster, but it also kind of creates it makes it stronger. So it's you don't drop it and it just cracks and breaks open. It's like a little more resistant that way, more like a brick. Really, what's happening here is the idea that we are building our structure with substandard. We're not building strong structures. We're building weak structures in our own selves as we're living life early on. We don't have the material. We scramble here or there, where this really represents our early life coming about. The struggles we have, building ourselves falsely, unable to leave the past, trying to get away, getting pulled back in, trying to get away, getting pulled back in. All of the struggles, but written in this big, huge, poetic, well, it's more than that, isn't it? Exodus is more than that. Okay. You see that when they're building structures. Okay, so that's just some of it. I don't recall Jesus. I haven't read him for a long time, but there's a point where somebody needs to get their vineyard back, and they send servants and slaves. And they get beat up, or finally he sends his son, and his son gets killed. It's like this struggle to get something back. That right there represents the struggle to get your life under control, to be to your mental choosing, so you don't sit there frazzled. Yeah, that's what that is, trying to get that back, the struggles. I'm going to jump back to Genesis. I'm sticking with the NRSV here just for the purpose of this read again. This is chapter 15, God's covenant with Abram. What we have down here is, after these things the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, You have given me no offspring, and so a slave born in my house is to be my heir. But the word of the Lord came to him, This man shall not be your heir. No one but your very own issue shall be your heir. He brought him outside and said, Look toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to count them. Then he said, So shall your descendants be. What are descendants? What have you named? The mother of 10,000 things. Yeah, descendants, as many as the stars. Okay, that's a big number. What's happening there too? You're going to find template sequences happening there. Let me jump to the beginning of that one. My apologies. I'm a little congested here. I'm kind of struggling with a cold. This one is a small one. Chapter 12 is the call of Abram. It's in chapter 12, verse 7. And it's right in the beginning. And what the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. So right there's just that going on. What happens if you read this? I'm going to interpret this coming up pretty soon. But right now we've got our Abram and Sarai in Egypt. They go there and Pharaoh marries her and they get slave and animals. And what happens? God sends plagues right there. There's our cyclical pain. See that one? Because of the union of Sarai and Pharaoh and our collection of things along the way, we are now being afflicted with plagues in life. And we're going to have to move on our way. This is going to sequence step to step. Watch for those. There's another one. I'm going to search for sand. What I have is... This is chapter 22, the command to sacrifice Isaac. Down here into verse 17. If sharp minds in the background, pay attention to these verse numbers. I swear. Yeah. I will indeed bless you, and I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of their enemies. Yeah. You know, those numbers represent the things we've named, the things we've judged, the things we hold. Memories. There are memories. Your offspring shall possess the gate of their enemies. You can always turn it in. These things are clever. It's mind-boggling. But it takes a while to spot that. Yeah, it's very old, and I think it's meant for us to find, but I think we're just so far removed from it. And really, what I'm doing in that crossing there is how I see the template. I did not see it in single material. It took a lot of work. I cracked into it slowly starts out with Jesus and Buddha comparisons, Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu. And at some point I'm like, okay, I see the same thing happening here. It gradually cracks into other stuff. And it just becomes thicker and thicker versions of it. But anyway, I think that's what you're looking for, right? Those sort of things, those sort of how in one place it looks one way and another place it looks another way. All right, back to Genesis. This is the second creation story where man was created. Verse number 19. So out of the ground the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all the cattle and the birds of the air and all that. So what are these things? Birds of the air, thoughts. Animal of the field, yeah, I don't know, just our qualities, characteristics, how we're going to act, how we're going to be. But you see that there's a naming going on right here. That is what? Naming is the origin of all particular things. So you would think, well, is that right? It isn't, because this is real early on. This is not the naming of life experiences. This is the naming, this is the you coming online. Because next what happens is woman is created. Our inner being is now created. We become old enough to become self-aware. At first, we're so young, we're not. So what this naming represents is this time frame where we're developing far enough to have self-awareness. This is where we're doing things that we probably don't remember today. You know, learning things like that's yellow, that's banana, that's food, that's my toy, that's grandma. You know, things at some point in time, you're naming all those things and you are becoming self-aware. And at some point in time, that inner being emerges through that process. Now, we can back it up one step further than that by looking at Babylonian works right in the beginning. Check this out. There's a point where it says there were no names to be spoken and no fates pronounced. Let me read the few lines that lead up to it. At a time when even the glories above had yet to be named, and unuttered was the word for the world which lay beneath. It was then that the first being Apsu, who was their source, and the progenitor Tiamat, the mother who gave birth to all, intermingled their waters, producing neither field nor marsh. At a time when no divine beings had yet come into existence. Okay, we are born right here, but not developed. There were no names to be spoken and no fates pronounced. We're born, but we have not named anything. We have nothing in our memories yet. And there's no fates pronounced. There's no cause and effect that is going to happen as a result of our life experience at this point. Then it steps into. But the gods were given birth within those intermixing waves. The first were Lamu and Lahamu. Their names were spoken. Now that would correlate to Adam and Eve or yourself when you are conscious and self-aware, having life experiences and memories. Okay. I should probably bring the video to an end. I think this is what you're looking for, but I wanted to make sure first I need to reestablish this guideline from time to time. I think I've done so in the past in videos that I don't even know where they are anymore. You just kind of move on doing your own thing. It's so big that you can't keep re-explaining the same things over and over again. But every once in a while you have to stop and redefine your position and what you're doing. And of course that changes too. I mean, when I first started the channel, I was not at this level. This is a growth process for me. It's growing. It's kind of in flux. So, but it's getting someplace. It seems to be successful for me anyway. So, yeah, there's the material itself, and then there's interacting with the material. Sometimes the videos on interacting with the material get a little bit more popular, but they're hard. They're hard on me to do. There's really not enough support back on those. It's just too raw out in public. So I'll stick to the technical stuff here. I think giving people advice is not my thing to do. I'm just looking for the template. That's my thing. I got my role in life here to just find my own way. But having fun pointing it out and showing people, hey, do you see this? I see something here. Well, I've had this Bible all my life, and I never knew these numbering sequences in here. There's a telltale pattern of something going on in there. That becomes, yeah, nobody else is cracking into that. What should I be doing? That's what I should be doing right there. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. All right. Yeah, questions, comments. I hope this video helps you form a better a better understanding of where I'm coming from, but also go ahead and formulate some questions very specifically. I think what you're looking for is kind of like a list that says, all right, our creation of us. It could be a building. It could be you're going after your land. You could be, what I really need to do is create the template. But there's things that were never included in the original ones, like, things like that, like getting back your land. It's really about getting back your early life. And then all of those other things, whether it's destroying a temple and building a new one, or getting back your vineyard, or all of them all represent the same thing, getting the land back from your uncle, from your family, or whatever. It's like, that's all my space. Destroying your world. How do you list? There's so many things to list when there's actually few steps. The way that they're carried is so variable that you don't realize it. The destruction of planet Earth is the same thing as the destruction of Sodom, and is the same thing as the destruction of Jericho. All of them are holding the same idea. You're destroying that early original structure and rebuilding yourself, a new life. You're destroying Tiamat and building a Babylon. That's the earliest I see it. Downstream from there are continual variations of that. Anyway, yeah, okay. Questions, comments. Engage with me. This is very helpful for me. All right. See you in the next video.